And we'll live.
Welcome to Village of Gulf Manor Executive Committee meeting. This is Monday, April 17, 2023, 5:30 p.m. Mr. Pritnoff, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Fisher. Mr. Knipp.
Present.
Mr. Marks.
That's a mistake, I'm sorry.
It's not on me, is it? Okay. I was looking at that, it looks very long. Okay, Mr. Michelson.
Here.
Mr. Simley.
Here.
Mr. Van Harn.
Here.
Okay.
Mr. Fisher did indicate to me he was coming tonight, earlier today. I didn't know he was going to be late, so we need a motion to excuse him.
How many members do you have of your committee? How many members are on the committee?
5.
5?
Five.
And you got,
Oh, four.
okay,
Thank you.
just make sure.
Motion to excuse Mr. Fisher.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. He's excused. For the agenda, I'd like to add a few small things that have come up tonight, just so you. Here.
That's an echo.
So, Ari, I don't know if you want to just note these real quick, and I'll ask for approval, of course.
Amendments to the agenda, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we're gonna set the
Okay.
agenda, but I'm gonna add a couple things.
Okay.
Little things here. One is, I think, Mr. Butler, I was told you might have some information on the trees. So-
Yeah, that was in my memo to council, but I can certainly share that with you
Okay.
tonight.
Yeah, I was told to bring that up tonight, just a little report on that.
Not a problem.
And then I'd like to follow up on the administration or administrative review process. It was going to be on tonight's agenda, but it got pushed off. But I do want to say a couple things about how we're going to progress with that anyway. And then there's been a push to make sure we get the committee heads together from all the committees to start to figure out how we all work together. So I wanted to try to set that date tonight for the committee heads. I think Busty's not here, but we'll try to.
Wasn't that addressed by the mayor at the last meeting?
So.
And I think, well, we'll discuss it at this time.
Okay, so those are little things I'd like to add. Other than that, is there anything else anybody has?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Okay, it passes. Persons registered to speak, none tonight for executive committee. Minutes to be approved. I have a few little adjustments to make. Anybody else at first or? Okay, Mr. Pridnoff, it says in the pending items.
Sorry, just hold on one second.
Okay, yep.
Okay, pending items. I have landlord tenant legislation, tenant resident survey.
Yeah, that one first. It says Mr. Van Harn recommended to focus more on long-term rentals rather than Airbnb. What I meant was, can we focus on this now as a village while we wait for the state?
More immediately. You want
Yeah,
that more
we're gonna
immediately?
split the two, but
Okay,
I don't mean to put more focus on it only because we're waiting. I don't, just,
okay,
the intention was that, or since we can do that, let's do it while we wait for the state.
Long-term rentals now Airbnb type later.
Yeah, and because we are waiting for the state yet, that seems to be the reason for pause on that. I just wanted clarity on that.
okay.
Because it makes it sound like it's more important, and I'm not really trying to say that. So. And then, let's see, I still want to ask this question. Was Mr. Marks at the last meeting? Was he on executive yet, or was he off before that? Because it says he made the motion to adjourn, and I thought he wasn't at the last meeting, but I could be wrong.
So there are a number of things that he motioned on.
Okay.
He was at the last. He also motioned to excuse Mr. Knipp.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No problem.
Approves it, so take that one.
Right, so, okay.
Never mind the legal term.
Okay, and that's all the things I had.
Okay. Any other amendments or? Okay,
Motion to approve the minutes with the revisions. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's see. All right, Mr. Butler, would you like to just report on the trees?
Sure.
Um,
The question was asked as to the authority to plant trees in the right of way. And the answer was actually quite simple. It's in our code. There's no authority to plant trees in the right of way. You're not allowed to do it. There's always been some discussion amongst villages, municipalities, et cetera, as to whether something like that you could plant it, the village could do that, because we own the right of way. However, I think if you're going to do that, you should probably amend the code to allow for trees to be planted in the right of way. Throughout this state, it seems there's a number of ways that communities do it, from no restrictions whatsoever. In other words, you can plant trees in the right of way as long as you're not violating some other law, it's obstructing the roadway, whatever. Up to what we have, which is absolute prohibition. Can't plant trees in the right of way. Then there's others that are somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle seems to be plant it in the right of way. You have to get a permit from the village to plant it in the right of way. The permit typically is of no cost. Sometimes there's a nominal fee for it. But my recommendation, because of the program you want to enter into for planting trees, that you amend that part of your ordinances to allow you to do it. Again, how that's done, whether it's, again, just absolute let it happen or with some restrictions, and a minimal restriction, again, would be have to have a permit. That way you can control the tree. You know, if there's some other, I don't know, some obstructions underground that the homeowner's not aware of, something like that, at least the village knows about it, and can control the number of trees on a particular plot, if that's what you want to do. But your ordinance definitely restricts it completely.
So it probably makes sense, given if I remember correctly, the mayor's tree proposal included a list of preferred trees. That should probably be considered. And if what I was able to find is I believe there is no vegetation allowed in the right of way.
No, you're correct.
And we have a couple of spots in the village where people have planted gardens or there's
No, that's all right.
fuzzy grasses.
I was just saying, we're kind of talking about something as if this is something we've all discussed and this is follow-up, and I'm not aware of, like,
Oh, you don't know the background.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it was brought up at a council meeting,
okay.
and I put in my memo for council for this evening what I just said. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that maybe you're not following this or understanding what it's going from. The mayor has, you might want to address this more, said,
No, that's-
So the mayor procured a grant that allows planting of trees in the right of way, or that's one of the things that we would encourage. And the concern is that we have an ordinance that states you can't plant trees in the right of way. So we need to resolve that.
and this would be a program to plant trees like anywhere in the village?
Well, initially, there are some guidelines that this is a grant that came from Duke. So there's specific things that people will be able to apply to do. And it's not that much money, it's a small amount. However, I think we need to be consistent in the way we enforce the ordinance. So, and then there are a couple of properties where I think there are issues with things growing into the street that we need to address if
Yeah.
we're going to take care of those.
I didn't address that because I didn't realize that, but there are two sections of your code. I forget the numbers. Again, I believe that's in my memo, but one just basically says no vegetation other than grass. Second one addresses trees. Kind of really you read them together. You can't plant anything but trees, or I'm sorry, but grass in the right of way. But I didn't know there were gardens growing in them. That's definitely prohibited by the code.
I mean, the only reason that I ask is as a property that once had ornamental trees in the right of way,
Mhm.
there were issues. I mean, trucks passing and taking out branches and
Right.
growing into the wires overhead.
Well, that's what I mean. The
Those trees grew a lot taller than I thought they would.
The trees would be allowed as long as they didn't obstruct the roadway, et cetera. I mean, there are other statutes that address those issues. But yeah, and that's, again, kind of why you would want there'd have to be some sort of application to do it. Because, if somebody plants for example, a weeping willow, which goes huge and wide, I don't think you'd want that in the right of way. That would not only block the street, it would, but other trees that don't get so big probably would be a problem.
Just seems like it would really need to be, with advice from professionals, species specific, because the root system could impact things that are underground, whether it's Duke Energy or probably sewer or water lines. And then to Steve's point, it goes up into the wires, and that's a whole different.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why most communities put some licensing requirement on it and don't just let people plant, anything.
And
you're
our
right.
right way is not very big either, so.
Right.
So maybe
Right.
there's some species recommendations that, hey, this is gonna be, this trunk is in 20 years is not gonna get more than, 6 inches wide or something like that.
And you're right, that's probably outside of the knowledge of
Us.
us.
So we do have resources through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And also there's that list that the mayor has, and I'm not sure where that came from, but we'll investigate that.
Yeah.
So the administration will work with the solicitor on a proposed legislation for this committee to consider.
Okay, I was part of some of the discussion of this, and I have some background in this. And there's definitely reasons to have specific trees that are allowed. Some of the weak sap can ruin car finishes. Some of them actually, in my where I used to live, they only allowed a certain type of locust to have these little leaves about the size of a grape because they blew away. I never had to rake them. They just composted into your lawn, and they weren't something that we had to be a part of cleaning up. Additionally to that is it can become part of the branding of the village. If it was all cherry trees, for instance, example, down next street, we already have some cherry trees in the village now on the Sanaville and the park, I think, those are trees. So those are things to consider for the long view, that can be part of it. And obviously, trees that may root to tear up sidewalks and streets and stuff. I actually contacted City of Cincinnati, and they have a list of preferred trees for our county. And I think the one that the mayor had was definitely tear down from that. So anyway, I can contribute some info, some thoughts on that too.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, Mr. Buckle. Okay, I just want to report regarding the administrator review process. We were going to have that on the agenda tonight to kind of memorialize the process we've been through and try to make it more firm and understood, because it's very confusing as we do this every year. And because it's got pushed aside, what I'm going to do, if it's okay with you, is I'm going to kind of write a draft of what I did and what we performed with the mayor and different things, put it together, and then I'll present it later. It'll save us a lot of time, I think, at least for discussion. I'm not saying that's what we're gonna do, but I figure it's a good way to start. We're just trying to do that tonight. since we've got other pressing matters, I'll do that on my own and try to keep the process moving that way. If that's okay. Okay, is that all right? I don't know if I need to go with that. And then secondly, as part of the review process, we did determine that another review is required to be proper with our charter. So there will be another one performed. It's certainly going to be pared down from what we did before, but I will be performing that before the next executive committee to make sure that we follow the charter, and that will be done. So I want to report that.
I don't think it's I think it's in the contract. I don't think it's in the charter.
Oh, okay.
It's in the
Sorry.
contract.
But yeah, I was told we had to do it.
No, you do, but it's not the charter.
Okay, thank you.
Just an extra review? Is it like biannually or is it like an additional review covering different things? Or?
You know, technically what happened was the last review wasn't done on time, but like essentially almost a year late. Because in the contract, we're supposed to do it yearly.
Got it.
Where we caught up to it, but I have to do another one to honor the contract.
Got it.
It's not, I'm just letting you know that we will be doing it, but certainly it's not going to be the same, whatever. And I will memorialize the process that we can all discuss, agree, change, because we got to get it firmer. It was very hard. I'll get into it more later, but it was difficult to decipher and figure out.
Sure.
So,
Thank you.
and let's see, okay. I wanted to also bring up, there's been a lot of, it's supposed to be happening and it hasn't yet. I wanted to see about setting a meeting for all the committee heads to get together to basically figure out how we're gonna, who's got what, whose responsibilities, what committees are doing what. The mayor has suggested that more than once, and I've tried to pull it together before and it hasn't happened, so I thought I'd do it a little more. Publicly, it would be Mr. Fisher, I believe, with head of finance, but myself, Mr. Is it Lucy now? Was he? And then, of course, I'd like you to obviously involve, the mayor would be there and Ron. But let's see, Mr. Lucy is not here. So should we try to set a date now or?
Maybe make a recommendation to council or something, because I know that, excuse me.
That's okay.
The community engagement had this discussion as well about what's the best way to proceed. And I think that they came to kind of a good conclusion on how to do that. And it probably will work with what you're talking about as well, but probably best discussed in full council.
Okay, all right.
I'm aware that one of the things that was discussed in Mr. Hurt's absence was an idea that was conveyed via administration on behalf of Mr. Hurt, that there's likely going to be a meeting this coming Monday that we'll want to incorporate into that process as well. So I want to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page.
Okay. I will plan to bring it up to council if I will, please. All right. All right, new business. We're going to discuss now, I mentioned it earlier, regarding the sustainability in the future or the strategic plan. There's two basic questions. There's a lot of confusion around for, I think, a lot of people. That basically the plan does not feel like it's really complete and therefore not totally embraced by us to move forward on completely. So the question is how are we going to finish? What's the process to kind of getting buy-in and ownership and whatever it is from everybody? And then the second question along with that is how are we going to accomplish the things required for the plan? How are we going to do that? So, so it's open for discussion.
Wouldn't this also, much like scheduling that meeting amongst all of the department or committee heads, discussing that in full council, wouldn't this also make sense, like, to address this in full council? Because it was the full council that was there for that meeting where you all kind of built what was important to you as a council and prioritized that. So I think that really to even get close to getting that buy-in, it really should be a discussion amongst the key players in that.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion of the process to get completed. Because, at least for me, my experience, right or wrong, was that I was waiting for something else to happen, when we were really supposed to be doing something. And I'll take it on myself, I didn't know that. And when it was basically put up for approval, I didn't feel like it was completely discussed. And, that was just my experience, so.
I
So
think
that
it
would be a better way to do it.
would make sense that if everyone or multiple people have the sense that this isn't complete, that group of people should be the ones to give input as to where they feel that it's lacking.
Yep.
And then once it's more solidified, then I can see where we come back to us to move it along, at least the portions that apply to executive.
I agree with that.
So are we suggesting then that the process be moved to council?
The next, at least the next steps of agreeing on what's
To-
missing or
to
what
cra-
the.
To craft the path forward,
So-
bring it to council and see.
Can I get a little clarity to this for everybody? Or attempt to?
Yeah, I have heard that we may be doing a special meeting for this. but
Well,
anyway.
Well, not this issue. So
Oh,
there are, if you remember from last year, there are a number of plates in the air when it comes to our redevelopment. One of them was the strategic plan, which we're talking about now. The strategic plan was wholly funded by the village. And that's one component of determining what the community is going to do for the future and where we want things to go. The second piece is the housing plan, which was funded by the county, which was developed by Liz Bloom, who at the time was with Xavier University. She's now on with her own consulting company, and that is still being paid for by the county. So they have a plan. They've done all the research. They want to present that to our council and let you guys react to it. And that's where I'm asking for a special meeting on Monday, the 24th, which is a week from today, to spend that evening talking about that plan and giving you guys some insights into what it is that they determined and found out where you want to go with it. I don't think you can mix the two because they are two completely different issues. The housing plan may place some clarity to the strategic plan, especially to some of the things that the mayor has talked about in terms of increasing community. And I think that's kind of the missing piece here. The other thing that I would add, let me look back here, on the pending items on the agenda, we have landlord tenant legislation and tenant resident survey. I believe that those are both going to be components of what Liz Bloom talks to us about next Monday. The good thing about that is they are consultants who have done this with other communities before, and this is not, we don't have to pay for this. This is being done by the county, and the county is interested in seeing us move forward on this once we get a consensus from council. So I think it makes sense to set everything aside, at least for that one evening, and concentrate on the housing plan, and then maybe come back and take a look at this item. What Mr. Van Harn and I talked about last week was when you look at the, where'd it go? When you look at the strategic plan sections, and I'm not talking about the detail, we have 6 major areas, which were sustainability into the future, inspiring a sense of community, livable and affordable neighborhood, health and wellness with our parks, our regional image, and then maintaining momentum with government services and infrastructure. All of those items to address at once are huge. I would harken back to when we've had other legislation that we broke down into specific pieces, that it makes sense. And I think we talked about this last October. Council needs to give us a sense of what they want to focus on first, because there are some things that we're working on already, but we need to have some focus to make sure that we're optimally doing the work that we need in specific areas. I think the whole thing's important, but there are so many things here, I don't think we can do everything at once. We need to pick and choose where we think our best priorities are for the current time in a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 approach. That also will give council members who have concerns about what's in this a chance to add text to it and context to it, but also allow the mayor to do the same thing. So. Did that help?
I think we should just discuss all of that by council when we're deciding how we're gonna go forward with it. And let everybody either put their comments out now or put it on a piece of paper. For a special meeting, we could do maybe the same Monday, just half an hour earlier, something like that. Where we could get everybody's input, what people wanna add, what people want to focus on first, second, third. Get that all on writing, everybody could add their 2 cents, and then discuss it openly at a open council meeting.
And I believe there was a challenge by the mayor last week for bullet points from council members with a specific date attached to that, which I don't have the date in front of me, but.
Was that Monday there?
Yeah, actually, what I said is I believe we should have a date and was asking for council's input on that. And this was at the community engagement meeting where we kind of flushed that out a little bit more. That video's on our YouTube page if you guys want to look at that for the specificity on that. I believe, if my recollection is correct, that a lot of this was getting into discussion with full council so that we could say, what is the date? Let's drop that date because we got people waiting on us. Right?
So my recommendation would be, if council agrees to do the special meeting Monday night to talk about the housing plan, then you all probably need to either carve out time at the next council meeting or do another special council meeting at some point just to talk about the strategic plan. But I think that's the only way that we can get everybody on the same page on this.
So we put we'll communicate it at council tonight, but also put out things, say, here's what we're asking for, here's how the response will generally be packaged, and it's by this date. That's kind of
What I'll do during my mayor's report at the top is I'll try to take what I've heard here and what I heard at the community engagement meeting and what I've heard from other people and try to just say that, and then there'll be an opening for people to put in feedback. Okay, does that sound good? And you can further discuss it within your committee reports, obviously.
Okay, but I guess for me, a strategic plan, I totally agree with the statement they made that it's a living and breathing document. Like, it's not necessarily meant to be perfect, but it's gonna have activity, it's gonna have some solidity to it. And there was one thing I read up there, for example, moved it.
Back to the front.
I forget where it was, but I'm just gonna make something up here, which I shouldn't. But, I forget what it said. It said something, we're gonna improve this in our village. And I get that, but at the same time, I think we're to a point where we could say, we're gonna improve this by doing this in our village, or starting this program, and be specific about it. Because when it has a name, it has a focus, it has a, it's gonna have leadership, it's gonna have that. And for me, the strategic plan has more of that in it. This is a little too loose, as long, and I think we can pull some of those things out yet. I think it's better direction for everybody to discuss with, but also it gives, specifics to our administration of this is pretty specific. And when this comes up, we're gonna deal with that. Those are the things that are missing from me. And the other piece is that I still feel like we have not, or we're not collected yet. Well, there was definitely disappointment or things missing or confusion or whatever. And that's just no way to handle it. an organization. It's gonna cause chaos. I've gone through that before, so, I'm just gonna say that, and I'm saying that to maybe, be included in what we say, when we try to give direction. Thank you.
So I could summarize for me to understand it. It sounds like what's kind of on the table is during the council meeting today, we basically agreed to get together maybe on Monday, at least the entire council, really to prioritize which actions to take first and how to go about that going forward.
So the Monday meeting is to talk about the housing plan specifically.
So maybe we need to come up with a date to speak specifically to this. Where all council's like, okay, here's where we're at, here's how we want to amend it, and here's how we want to move forward, and attach hard dates.
Yeah, I think Mr. Hurth was suggesting that we do that after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with
Because I
that.
think it's going to put some context to things that you think might be missing in the strategic plan.
So I would,
That aspect of it alone is going to be a full meeting.
I'm good with that.
Well, even the distinction, Mr. Hurth, that you make, that there's a strategic plan and a housing plan, that helps me clarify things. To me, it was still kind of this pile of stuff. That's one step forward. Okay, now I get that. Now there's something unique about that. So,
It was very confusing at the meeting when Liz was here. I understood that this was including the housing plan, and that's why I was so frustrated that it's not really giving us new data. But then it was explained that last follow-up communication we've been, this has nothing to do with the housing plan. Well, Liz came here was just support to whatever his name
Dale.
is.
Mr. Dale,
Mr. Dale, but she's gonna come back with her own, results of her study that we're looking forward for. To make sure that we're all on the same page, because I was confused after it was all packaged together, and we didn't really get anything out of our study.
so I guess this will be addressed in council now to move forward. Yes, I'll report as best I can, but it'll be the mayor's report. Anything else on this? Okay. Let's see. Mr. Hurth, you want to report on the road traffic study and
yeah, so there's a couple of things that we're working with the village engineer. And for those of you who are new to this, the village cannot fund our own internal engineer, so we contract with JMA and Associates, who is a company that they are civil engineers. They design all of our road plans. They actually do analysis of what's happening with our roads. And then we are just completing next year our first 5-year road plan with them. At the completion of Hamel next year, we will have completed over around 75% of the streets in Gulf Manor have been resurfaced and improved. So the timing of that coincides with consideration for the next time the road levy comes up. So what we're going to be looking at them to do, and I have listed on the board over here, we need to know what the next 5-year road plan looks like. So they will actually go through the village again, take a look at the condition of our roads. For the roads that have been completed, this time will also include a component of maintenance. So if there are seams that need to be sealed or concrete that needs to be repaired, those kinds of things that'll be included in this new 5-year plan. There are a couple of maintenance things that need to be taken care of. One of them is the Bremont intersection at Mayflower, where there's something happening structurally underneath. Trying to figure out what the next piece of resolving that will be. 2 parking lots here, the municipal building and the park parking lot. After the Weehee Road project is complete, we need to address how we're going to deal with resurfacing those 2 areas. The municipal parking lot is a challenge because we have a drainage issue back by the maintenance shed. And that is probably going to require some underground work to reconfigure the drainage system and to put in French drains in front of the garage doors. They're also looking at recommendations to do that. There is a round 3 of SORTA funding that's coming up. We had talked about doing something on the Sandoval with that. But then with the next problem, the worst, probably the street that needs the most attention without having to completely reconfigure and resurface it is Ridge Acres. That's one of the newer original concrete streets that has a number of joints and curb pieces that need to be resurfaced and rehabilitated. So those are all the things that we're talking about with JMA. When it comes to Sandoval, though, and also thinking about the strategic plan, one of the components of the plan was our discussion that we had about making a downtown district with the Weehee and Sandoval intersections. So there's a lot of grant money that could be available to us that Mr. Pridenoff has been investigating. We also have the SORTA round 2 money that's coming to us to redo the intersections at Elbrook and Weehee with new control posts and new traffic signals and walk signals and those kinds of things. So as we do these small projects, it strikes us that we need to really have a long-term plan for what we want Sandoval to look like 10 years from now. And to do that, we really need to do a traffic study. A traffic study would be done by our engineer. In fact, they just merged with a company so they now have an in-house group that does this, so that helps us from a cost standpoint. But what they will do is measure traffic. The current plan is from Bremont to the railroad track. I also want them to include Englewood and traffic patterns on Englewood Avenue for a couple of different reasons. We'd like to have some data on what the actual pedestrian and traffic use is in that whole particular area. There's kind of a quadrangle of streets that mesh there. This will also give us an opportunity to find out what we can do to calm traffic problems that we've had on Sandoval. There's the issue of how close the right-of-way is to the street on the south side of Sandoval and how far it is away from the houses on the north side of Sandoval. Do we need to look at realigning the street? If we do that, we would need to realign utilities. If we do that, we could put them underground. If we have the funding to do all of those kinds of things. So there's all these ideas in the air. The place to start is to have a study and to take a look at what we're actually talking about when it comes to traffic and pedestrians and those kinds of things. We know there are some issues that need to be addressed. We had the youth that was hit at Stover. Was that at Stover?
Was that Elbrook? At
Elbrook earlier this year. And then we also have concerns about the Hamel crosswalk that it was installed, but I think it's hard to see. And there are different kinds of modern contraptions now that you can put out there to make things more visible. Those are the kinds of recommendations that they will make to us. Nothing we have to do, but they will give us some options and allow us to try and take a look at Sandoval Avenue and see what it looks like in the future. My personal opinion is I'd like to have Sandoval Avenue look like Montgomery Road in Montgomery, with decent lighting and good crosswalks and stuff like that. And the question is, how do we get there? How do we continue to get these smaller grants and be able to work toward that? And doing this study would be the way to get us there. So we can do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Our whole lives are in phases at this point. So it looks like the cost of the study will be around $20,000, which would be funded through the road fund. That is, I think, including the Englewood component of it. They're adjusting that, but I think it's a smart thing to do at this point. So our efforts can be actually working towards something that we've got in hand.
Just for clarity, they're gonna do a study, and does it just provide data in terms of cars and traffic and stuff? And then it will include maybe suggestions, like you said, of calming measures?
So it would include things like pedestrian vulnerability, where there are blind spots. One of the things that I explained to them is when I'm driving down the Sanibel West towards the center of the village, even though there are cars parked on the north side of Weehee, it always feels like when you're driving, like somebody's going to jump out in front of you or somebody's going to pop a door out in front of you. And I think part of that is it's so narrowly spaced there. I would like to, I think minimally, we should look at striping La Sanibel like we did with Vera, because I'm not sure why, and Captain Reed can tell you this, Vera's parking problems kind of went away after we did that. And the parking seems to be more orderly now than it was prior to the road project. But as you start thinking about that, there must be other things that they can suggest to us. And do we want that whole side of La Sanibel to be nothing but solid parking? Should we have some things like pedestrian waiting areas or bus stops or some type of way to break up all of that whole thing of cars that are there? The other thing they'll take a look at is whether or not they would recommend bike lanes, which I think Langdon Farm Road, not in our jurisdiction, but the improvements that they made over there in the last year have calmed that traffic considerably. It doesn't feel like it's like you're on a raceway when you're over there. And that's really what we would be looking for in having them do a study, is improvements that would increase the livability for the people that live there and also slow down traffic. So,
Striping meaning designating this parking spots, yeah. Yeah, well,
yes, correct.
I'd like to add or kind of join in your idea of it looking like Montgomery. I'm kind of a boulevard guy. I don't know if that would work, but a center lane with grass and trees. So it's essentially what I think we're asking for. I'd like to suggest to them is if there's anything that will give people that drive through an experience of Gulf Bend, being in Gulf Bend, you know, where you'll feel it when you enter and oh, it looks different. At least that's going to be covered with Ms. Bloom at next meeting. And there is no executive session tonight, so that's it. If that's it, then
I'm sorry,
that's right.
motion to adjourn?
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sure. Thank
Didn't
you.
mean to rush it.
No, it's okay.
That's my grandson.
I can't believe you're that job.
I can't either.
I still remember when you told us about this.
Hey, Ron,
It's still online.
my grandson.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Is that the cutest baby ever? Admit it, you can admit it.
They always are when they're yours.
Yeah, exactly. I'll say, my kids aren't.
No, he's the cutest ever. It wouldn't matter.
Clear.
That's amazing.